All right, welcome to the panel discussion from the Union Board to the big stage. What we have this afternoon is the great pleasure of welcoming Bertis Downs, Russell Carter, and John Huey to the stage. I had the pleasure of having dinner last night with these three guests, and I can assure you that I have no idea where the conversation today will take us. But I'm sure it will be charming, funny, and filled with stories of their lives dedicated to music and artistry. We're so lucky to welcome them back to Davidson, and this is where I'd cue up the Indigo Girls back together again if I could. Between the three of them and the artists they've represented, there are countless Grammy Awards, CMA Awards, many platinum records, magazine covers, Kennedy Center honors, and a feature in Greta Gerwig's blockbuster Barbie. This is a panel that represents the veritable who's who of the music industry. They've worked across musical genres, including country, Americana, rock, and gospel, and have worked closely with such renowned artists as The Police, REM, Amy Grant, Keith Urban, and the Indigo Girls, to name a few. Conversation today will be about their time at Davidson, how music has been a through line for their lives, how friendship and camaraderie impact their approach to management, and of course, some of the shenanigans they got into while they were students at Davidson. But first, let me introduce our guests. Russell Carter, class of 75, is the longtime manager of the Indigo Girls. He is an Atlanta native and wrote concert and album reviews for the Davidsonian as a student. After leaving Davidson, he received a JD from the University of Georgia Law School. He's represented bands including REM and Widespread Panic. He's the founder of Russell Carter Artist Management in Atlanta, where he represents musicians including the Indigo Girls, Shelley Wright, and Sean Mullins. Bertis Downs, class of 78, was the longtime counsel and manager of the band REM, and to this day he remains an advisor to the band members. He's active as a philanthropist and advocate of public education. As such, he served on the boards of the Network for Public Education, National Education Association Foundation, and other education advocacy groups. Bertis has established a named scholarship here at Davidson and the Bertis E. Downs III and Eugene M. Downs Senior Education Abroad Fund. He has also served as adjunct professor at the University of Georgia Law School, where he focused on entertainment and music law. John Huey, class of 78, left Davidson after he graduated to join the Paragon Booking Agency, who represented the Allman Brothers. After Paragon, John formed Frontier Booking International, FBI, working with acts like The Police, Joan Jett, the Go-Go's, and the B-52s. He now serves as co-founder of Creative Artists Agency, CAA, in Nashville, whose roster includes Faith Hill, Amy Grant, Lady A, the Zac Brown Band, and Alan Jackson, among many, many others. In 1999, Huey was awarded a Grammy Award for Best Southern Country or Bluegrass Gospel Album for The Apostle. In 2015, he was inducted into the Georgia Music Hall of Fame, and in 2022, he was honored with the Gospel Music America Leadership Award, and in 2023, the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Country Music America. From Country Music America. John jokingly recounts his academics here by saying he, quote, majored in the college union. And that's where I want to start my questions today as I make my way to my seat. So let's start with the space that we're in, the C. Shaw Smith 900 room, which wasn't the 900 room that you all knew when you were here, but still, this space has hosted many illustrious acts, including the Indigo Girls the first time. They'll be back tomorrow in a much slightly larger venue. REM, The Police, not to mention Otis Redding, Marian Anderson, Muddy Waters, and the Dave Matthews Band. So can you tell us what the union meant to you and your time serving on the College Union's concert committee?
The union for me was everything. And as you come in, you see the plaque over there, C. Shaw Smith Award. You know, I started that like 2 years out of college, and it's great to see that still up on the board. And I had, when I went to the school, said I want to start something in honor of Shaw. And I said, but there's one qualifier. I said, what's that? Grades can't have anything to do with it. You know, so, there was pushback, but no, there's no but. Grades can't have anything to do with it. Obviously, if they're here and they're still in school and they're passing, you know, and they decide to make the union their, you know, their degree. Sociology was on my diploma because after my sophomore year, I had taken 8 out of the 10 necessary classes. So that made it a real easy choice as to which way to go. My journey here was the student union. I mean, going to class was a process of what I needed to do to get out so I can get in the business. Had several opportunities prior to that, but I knew in my family, my dad had a PhD. I knew I had to at least graduate from college. So that was the catalyst of me learning how to organize my time, get to hopefully grow up. I still, at 68, think I still got some growing up to do. But this building, and C. Shaw Smith was my mentor. He was my faculty advisor. You know, I had another one for academics, but the one I paid attention to most was C. Shaw. Love the man and love the way you guys have honored him in this room.
I was on the concert committee, was it called? Concert division as well, and worked with John on a bunch of acts we brought. Some really memorable ones for good reasons and bad. But we also had a venue called Love Auditorium, which was, I think it's now the family dining hall or something. It's where the banquets are and stuff. The really nice big receptions. Lily Gallery. And it used to be a 1,200 seat auditorium called Love. And one of my memories from college union, well, college union days was like kind of like junior music business. You learned how to be in the music business because you did the work. John did the lion's share of it in terms of getting the booking done and dealing with agents and all. But then there was a whole coterie of people, and I was one of those that, the concert's coming, you got to organize it, you got to, have people taking the tickets and doing the basics of publicity and putting up handbills, all the stuff that still goes on right now. And so it was kind of a way to learn relationships. In John's case, led directly to his first job 2 weeks after he graduated from college. In my case, it at least planted the seed of doing something in music. Had always been a fan, and kind of the business side of it. So it was an important part of my life here. And around that time, I was graduating with a history major. Like John, I had more history credits after being a humanities student than anything else in it. And I had a history advisor, Malcolm Parton, and I figured I'd just keep it the same. So I graduated in history, went to law school, and ended up kind of falling into this job that I still have more than 40 years later, representing the band from Athens called REM. But the union and WDAV, the old WDAV, when it was a student run, kind of ragtag lefty radio station. I had 2 years where I did a good bit of, I did shifts. I was a DJ playing all Allman Brothers stuff. I mean, it was pretty boring to most people, except me. No, I didn't play much Rush. I really was in my Allman Brothers phase in those days, and they didn't care. You could play anything. So it was a time of growth and experiential learning.
I was not involved with the union, and I also had no ambitions to work when I was in college, nor law school. I never thought about getting a job until I got out of law school, and suddenly there was nowhere else to turn but doing something. But at college, I mean, I love music. I was heavily involved in music, but I wish somebody had told me to think about how I could take my interest in music and, apply it towards some future job. But that never happened in high school. My parents never, I don't think it crossed their mind that music was something I might do for a living. And I didn't, Davidson, it was all academics. But you don't come to Davidson to, generally speaking, at least back in my day, to get a job. You went to graduate school. I mean, I admire John for knowing from day one he wanted to be an agent. That's awesome. And you don't get any more successful at being an agent than John as a result. I I did a little radio stuff. I only played bootleg Bob Dylan records when I was uh, doing my radio shift. And in those days, there were a lot of bootleg. Like, I don't know if anybody follows Bob Dylan, but he has an official bootleg series that he's put out over the last 15 years. And I had every one of those sessions on colored vinyl that you could buy in the back of record stores. And I like the poor quality of the sound. I'm used to that. The new cleaned up ones don't sound right to me, but here's what I did at Davidson. Every Tuesday, I would buy every new record, vinyl, which was all there was, and record it onto a cassette player, and then sell it the next week and buy the new ones. And there was a way to sell to students. You remember that? You could, there was some kind of flyer that they put in everyone's box in the dorm, and I would sell records weekly. And I built some kind of thing in my dorm where the beds were up in the air and the bottom was wall-to-wall speakers. And we listened to a lot of music every night, whether we had schoolwork or not. We listened to a lot of music. And then we got in the car and drove all over the place and went to a lot of concerts. And I did do reviews. If I had any ambition, it was perhaps to be a Rolling Stone writer, write reviews for Rolling Stone. But I was telling somebody at an earlier thing, when I got out of Davidson, I went up to Chapel Hill School of Journalism and chatted with the dean, and he talked me out of that very quickly. He said, if you're independently wealthy, do it. If you're not, go get a real job. So I ended up going to law school. But I wouldn't trade my Davidson experience for anything. It was great. I loved all the academics. I studied a lot of art, and I took humanities and studied a lot of philosophy, and music was all extracurricular, but it was profound.
Can you all talk to us about what a manager's role is, an agent's role is, what representation is, how you got involved, and maybe some of the changes you've seen from when you started to now in the music industry?
Well, I'll start with that one. As a talent agent, my job is to secure the personal appearances, negotiate their fees, form the tours, route the tours. And that's, I book bands. They play a show and they make $1, I make 10 cents. It's just a pretty simple transaction. I'm not involved like these guys are involved in every aspect of the artist's career. We have expanded our role over the years, and we got involved sponsorships, and somebody wants to write a book. We got the #1. We've had 40 #1 books in the last 3 years, I think. So it was, we have the largest sports division. So athletes, musicians usually want to be athletes, and athletes usually want to be musicians. So there are a lot of collab between those different companies. So it's putting the plugs together to earn the way and listen to what the managers and the artists want us to do. They lay out the game plan. We have a discussion about it, but we execute. They are the mouthpiece for the artists. But that's what I do. And it was easy, kind of a gravitation after being at Davidson. As a concert chair for 2 years, I just dealt strictly with the agencies that represent the talent. I did not go through a middleman, which most schools do, understandably, because it's a huge maze to kind of deal with. But I'm from me talking to agents for 2 years, I said, get ready, you're going to hire me in 2 years. So I had several job offers by the time I graduated, because I'm pretty singularly focused. And that was the easiest way to get in the business, to deal with the people I dealt with while I was at Davidson.
Being a manager, it's kind of a hard question to answer, because it depends on the artist. If you're dealing with a solo artist that's, underage and needs a lot of direction and, creative input, and it's very different than what my job was. I was working with, they were young, but they were of age, and they had a very clear direction of what they wanted. And they were a band. They were very much a band of equals, brotherhood in this case. And so it kind of depends on the dynamic in that in that organism of the artist, and then the relationship with the manager. But I'd say regardless of, those considerations, manager's job is communication, organization, collaborating with other members of the team, working closely with the agent when it's time to tour. Obviously, knowing what's going on with the business management, tax side of things, kind of knowing all the various aspects of the artist's career, working with lawyers. In the case of both Russell and myself, we went to law school, ended up becoming managers, but they're pretty closely related in terms of deals and knowing what to spot, what you need to make sure. And then the other thing I think managers do way back in the olden days when we first got started, and certainly nowadays, is you're helping protect the artist. You're helping the artist with their rights and how they hang on to their rights or how they exploit their rights, or, when you get to considerations of economics and advances versus royalties and all those kinds of things, managers are very involved in that. The way I described my relationship with the band I worked with, REM, is that they really, in a lot of ways, were self-managed. They knew what they wanted to do. It was up to me to kind of help achieve consensus by them talking, and then go out in the world and help make that happen. And it sometimes worked better than other times. We certainly weren't perfect in our decision making, but it was always a group decision. And having a manager is kind of a layer of filter and insulation from having to do all that stuff themselves, which they're artists. They didn't want to do all that. I don't know if that answers the question, but that's my understanding of it's what I've been doing for all these years. And I think that's what, in my case, a manager does.
So I graduated from law school in 1980, and Burgess and I were at UGA at the same time, and there was a huge music scene there, a burgeoning music scene, I should say, all very young bands, B-52s. When I was a first-year law student, they were waiting tables, and then they got it literally, hanging out, playing, and got to deal with Warner Brothers, had a huge hit record, and put Athens on the map. REM obviously came out of that scene. Widespread Panic, Black Crowes, Indigo Girls. I mean, the whole Atlanta, Athens scene was huge, and labels, all the big labels from LA, Nashville, New York, came to Athens to find talent and literally started signing up bands left and right. It was a very exciting time. Just as a fan of music, it was a fun place to be. But by the time I finished law school, it dawned on me, well, maybe there's some way to get involved in this. And so rather than take a job with a law firm, I set up my own firm, and I had a few Atlanta business connections, and I did some general law, but I basically started working with bands generally for free because I didn't know what I was doing and they didn't really know how to play yet. And we were all learning.
They didn't have any money.
No money. No band does starting out. But I mean, you have to gamble. You roll the dice when you represent musicians as a lawyer quite often, and certainly as a manager. But the bands were legit. They were super talented. I mean, REM was a trend-setting band from a creative standpoint, from a business standpoint. I mean, the way Burgess and Jefferson Holt, who was involved back in those days, put their structure together and steered that band was a blueprint for what became alternative rock bands, and the clubs they played, the circuit that was developed, the radio stations that supported them. It was a time of development and creativity from a business standpoint and a music standpoint. It was great. So for 10 years, I practiced law, and by the third or fourth year, all I was doing was representing bands. And I got to know the business affairs people in New York and LA, primarily the centers for the record labels that signed the kind of music that was in Atlanta and that I understood and could advocate for. And the first goal was just to get a record deal. And once I got 1 or 2 record deals for bands, then all of a sudden, friends of REM, maybe, you know, bands in Minneapolis that they played with on the club circuit, say, how do you do this? Do you know a lawyer? And they would refer people to me. Burtis was doing REM and nothing but REM, which was a decision he made wisely and to everyone's benefit. But as a result, I got a lot of referrals. And that became what I did for a living. It's contract work, legal contract work, getting record deals. And once a deal was in place, getting producer contracts, publishing deal is a big component for an artist. And then I would sit back and hope the band did well. And if they did, there was ongoing legal work. But after about 10 years of it, I realized I wanted to be more involved in the careers of the clients that I would find in a club, nurture, and get a record deal. And I wanted to keep working with them and get more involved, which I learned over time meant management. And I had been working with the Indigo Girls and Matthew Sweet, 2 artists that were involved in the Athens, Atlanta scene, and friends with REM involved. Both those artists worked with REM in various ways, just supporting each other. I got Amy and Emily a record deal and a publishing deal, and then the label said, you need a manager. And they just felt like, can you manage us? We don't want to have to interview people and end up with some stranger. And I was ready to make this leap. And I took on Matthew and Indigos, and things worked out well. It was Matthew's 3rd record. It was a record called Girlfriend. It blew up his career. And Amy and Emily's 1st record, just, Closer to Fine, was on it. And it just,
Did you shut down your legal side when you signed those, or did you do it simultaneously?
I mean, when both those records actually went gold and then platinum, I had no choice but to just start unloading legal clients. And I sent them to a couple of lawyers that I, respected. One of them in Atlanta moved to New York. It's Zach Brown's a lawyer to this day. The last legal client I gave up was Widespread Panic, just because they were so much fun to work with. Widespread, I mean, that's a classic band from Athens. I used to say, if you go to a Widespread Panic and there's 5 minutes of good music, that's a good show. And then it was like 10 minutes and then 15 minutes. They kept getting better and better. And then they got bigger and bigger. They used to open for Indigos. And then I would say, can Indigos open for you guys now? I mean, they blew up and they're so successful and so talented ultimately, but they started from scratch and worked their way toward it. It was really cool to watch it.
I'll give a quick little interlude here of something Russell just said that sparked me back to something. I don't know if I've told this in public. I probably told it. It's a story from the first time REM played as REM. They played this famous church show when they didn't have a name yet. And it also relates to my career at College Union, because when I went to law school, I asked if I could be on the University Union, which brought concerts, and they had to check. They weren't sure law students could be. And they finally came back and said, okay, well, through that, I met one of the guys in REM who John knew from Macon, named Bill Berry. Long story short, I knew Bill had started a band. I knew that they were actually playing a show, and they were now called REM. So Russell and I went down with a few other law students. The show didn't start till 1:30 in the morning, which was, I'd say we probably studied till about 12:30, and then we went down to the club in downtown Athens. It was actually a speakeasy kind of thing. It was called the Coffee Club. It wasn't really a club. It didn't really have a license. And that's why after about 45 minutes, the police came and shut it down, legendarily. And it's also a true legend. But the thing I remember that relates to Russell is that Russell, as you can tell, knows a lot about music. I knew about the Allman Brothers, and Russell knew everything about he has what's, I guess, an encyclopedic mind for music. And he's also 3 years older than me, much better educated on that kind of stuff. And so we're standing there, even though we're only a year apart in law school, and just, these guys go up and we only know Bill and I knew Peter from the record store. I don't know the other two guys at all. There's no stage. It's a little tiny, it's smaller than this room. It's half the size of this room. Concrete. I would say it did not have a lot of creature comforts, the building. And they start playing and they play a few songs and play a few more songs. And some are clearly covers. They're Secret Agent Man by the Monkees. They played a song by the Troggs. They were playing these kind of classic 60s and 70s rocking, punky, guitar-based, fast records jumping all over the stage. Well, there wasn't a stage, jumping all over the floor. And so at one point, Russell and I are trying to figure out which songs have they written, because we knew that some of them were their songs and some of them were covers. And Russell, I would kind of look to him as like the wisdom in the room, and he'd go, I've never heard that. It must be one of theirs. I mean, and so literally you could not tell the songs that had been hits for bands in England 10 years earlier from the songs they'd written. And so right at that moment, it was pretty clear they had it. They had whatever it took to write a tuneful. They were still learning, literally learning to play guitar and drums and, you know, learning how to be a band very first time they played. And I counted on Russell to let me know which ones were the covers and which ones were the originals. And I'm pretty sure he got them all right. It was the thing they're most proud of in their whole careers. They wrote good songs. They wrote good songs from the get-go. And I will also say Russell was a huge help in my career because it allowed me to go to DC and work for a judge one year when the band had already gotten started. And it was kind of like, is this going to be a thing? Is this just a hobby? Is this just kind of for fun? Or is this a job? And in the meantime, I had this opportunity to go work for a judge for a year as a clerkship, and I didn't want to pass that up as a lawyer. Russell took care of the band that year. Russell was a law practitioner. He was allowed to represent bands. I wasn't, since I was working for a federal judge and there was a new rule saying you couldn't practice law. So Russell and I collaborated that whole year, but he did the heavy lifting of representing the band, and it built some experience for him. The band was well represented, and I came back and took the reins back over a year later, and all this was 83, 84. Okay, enough.
It's all interconnected. I mean, Amy and Emily came to my law office and I asked them, you know, why? And Amy said, Michael Stipe's a friend of ours. That's why they walked in.
This segues nicely to something John mentioned earlier in Humes when he was speaking to our class. You said that finding new talent and recruiting new talent is really exciting. Can you talk to us about what makes that exciting and what you look for in an artist to know whether they're worth rolling the dice on or not?
Well, the way I look at an artist is pretty much out of date because the algorithms and everything's being streamed. The marketplace is dictating what's going on. For years, it's just gut, you know, man, I really like this. And I think everybody else will like this too. When Bill Berry was our office guy, runner at the Paragon Agency, when I started my career in '78, then he went to Georgia, and that created a whole relationship that you see transcended. Students meeting together, played this club called the 688 Club one time, and they opened, and there was like a couple hundred people there. And then we went the next time they headlined, they sold out. And we went, whoa, there's something here. I saw the Zac Brown band. I was in Atlanta at a show at the Fox Theater, and I was encouraged to stop and see this band. I never heard of them. They were a bar band, stopped off. When I heard Chicken Fried and 100 beer bottles in the air, I went, whoa, this is going to be big, you know? So it's fun. You're good. Zac Brown band.
Oh,
Zac. So the journey is, when I see brand new acts, I first of all try to give them some wisdom because I am in my fourth quarter, and I go, enjoy the journey, because when you get at the top, that's when, I'm not saying that's all there is, but you reach the pinnacle of success. Then you want to figure out how you stay there. How do you stay on top? And then you see the competition nipping at your heels, and you kind of go, oh, there are very few people that feel comfortable in their skin at every aspect of their career. There's the ups and downs on success, but I know it's the journey towards success is the one that needs to be relished. And I love watching young bands succeed. And I always say, my job, I said, right now, you need me a lot more than I need you. My job is to make it so I need you a lot more than you need me. Because the bigger an act gets, the more choices they have. And even though they they make the decisions and we're answering to them, but it's hopefully they surround themselves with great relationships, long-term relationships. I mean, REM's had their same agency and same agent his whole career, same manager. You know, it's about watching and living and growing up with these artists. I've been Amy Grant's agent for 40 years, you know, so that's something we treasure. We have a dinner every year to celebrate another year in, so.
Russell?
I mean, one thing you'd asked about was what's exciting about a new artist. Part of it is the innocence of being starting out writing music, having no idea if anyone cares about it or if it means anything, or even if you're good at it. I mean, there's a lot of self-doubt when you start out doing anything creative. I stopped taking on new clients probably 15 years ago, just because I had my hands full sustaining the careers of artists that I've represented for years. But I ran across this guy named Abe Partridge a few years ago, right before the pandemic. And I decided I got to represent this guy because he just was so unique. And at first there was very little I could do because the pandemic hit and we were all laying low. There were no concerts. But coming out of the pandemic, you know, he did a record and I started getting him out there. He's a late bloomer. He was a fundamentalist Baptist preacher for a number of years until he saw the light and realized everything he was saying and doing, he didn't really believe in. He really kind of left it behind. He had a young family, so he joined the Air Force to support them and ended up overseas in a war, which was a second sort of disenchantment in his life. And he started painting and writing music. And he did it for a number of years without really showing it to anybody or playing his music. And then he got up the nerve and went out and started performing and realized people kind of dug it. I mean, we're talking 50 people in a club. And he would sell his art because he didn't have CDs at the time. And that was sort of catching on. And he played Eddie's Attic in Decatur. And somebody said, you got to go see this guy. And I just walked up and I said, let me help you. And, you know, it's developed. He's out on tour right now, playing in 400 to 800 seat rooms, opening for an artist. And he walks into a crowd that has no idea who he is, never heard his music. In many cases, never heard anybody who talks like he talks. Like, he's very, very Southern. He's from Mobile, Alabama. My mother's from Mobile. I've never heard anyone from Mobile talk as Southern as this guy sounds. I'm not sure where it came from. But he's super smart. He's self-taught intellect, but you don't know that when he opens his mouth. His grammar is terrible. And he knows it. But it's a shtick at this point. He's not going to leave it behind. But he will convert 400 people into fans in 30 minutes. And that is an amazing thing to see. And, you know, he gets a little airplay on an NPR station. That's so exciting for him to hear his music on the radio. And, you know, fast forward to an artist that's been doing it for 30 years successfully. They have to play all their hits. Everyone in the audience knows their music. It's a different thing, and it's great. It's rewarding, and it's fun for an artist, but it is not the same kind of excitement as, you know, getting your first Grammy nomination or your first, you know, good review in a national, you know, magazine or newspaper or something. It's just a lot of fun.
Because you're sitting there in the next review, it may not be so well. The sophomore slump happens a lot.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway.
So that artist needs to be in the 900 room.
Yeah, for sure. Who's in charge here?
So before we open it up to questions on the floor, I wanted to ask you, managers do a lot. They're responsible for a lot, which also means everything that goes wrong is the manager's fault. So when have you kind of earned your keep, as it were. Something has gone wrong on tour. You've had to advocate for an artist. You've maybe tried to convince them to do something that they weren't necessarily excited to do, but you could see using your business acumen and musical savvy that this is the direction they should pursue, these kinds of things.
I've had instances, and it several times when you come in outside shows or in weather issues. And when artists, artists is gonna, we work for them. If they say they're not going on stage, they're not going on stage. But it's great when you can come up with a scenario where you can create an environment. One time on an Amy Grant show, the power went out and got everybody to light their phones. And she sat on the edge of the stage and did an acoustic show based on the lights of the phones. And that'll never happen again. You pay big money to create that mistake, So when you see an opportunity to solve a problem and keep everybody calm, or for my job is getting somebody paid when they didn't play because of weather or whatever. So it's an interesting situation, but I think that's when a guy gets a check and he didn't play, and other people around didn't get paid, and my act did, then I did my job and earned my money.
Okay, should we open it up for questions from the floor? Adrian's walking around with a microphone. If you have a question, feel free to ask. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. It's so really interesting. I have a daughter who's getting a master's in business at Berkeley right now. And she works for some of the a couple of big labels. She worked for Warner and works for Big Machine. But interestingly, you're both lawyers and you're not a lawyer. And then it kind of and she had an opportunity to meet Don Passman a couple of times, who's a lawyer, and he wrote.
He's our lawyer.
He's your, but interestingly, in his book, and what he said to her once, and I was in the room when he said it, was that it's this merging between agents and managers and lawyers, that lawyers are actually, and you were kind of touching upon it, the way that a lot of these artists ultimately are able to land their record contracts and their record deals. So, I mean, do you regret not having gone to get a law degree? No, but you two do have a law degree.
I have a Davidson diploma, man.
Yeah, which is awesome.
I May 28th of 78, I graduated, and I started on June 12th.
Yeah.
I wanted to take the summer off and go to Europe and go backpacking. He said, no, you got a job, but you got to be here 12.
Because so much of the industry seems to be contract heavy, right? And so like somebody coming up through the industry, would you recommend a direction like get a law degree? Because even though you might not use it, you become a manager, it's a really good base to be able to interact with everybody throughout the industry. Or
management is at the top of the heap if you got the right act. That's, if you're a lawyer and agent, you can be a lawyer for a lot more clients. Agent, you can be an agent for a lot more clients. But if you score, if you hit an act, if you hit an REM or like that. So it's, but I think there's been a lot of blendings of the roles, with the acquisition of promoters and creation of Live Nation. There's your ticketing company, but now there are more ticketing companies I've ever seen, and there's different buildings. There's always something to negotiate. And, usually we found sometimes, like I have an act say, I want a tour deal. I want a tour deal. Like it's a badge of honor. And I go, if you give a tour deal, then all these people in all these cities that promoted you your first, second, third time around, they get left out. And you know what? They are going to do a better job because they're local. They're in there. You get a tour deal, it's maybe a big check, but those guys they're not eating what they kill. They're all salaried, and it's a publicly traded company. And sometimes they're buying tours for $20 million for a tour, and it's worth 12. They lose a big chunk, but guess what? They had the inventory.
Mark
Doesn't help the artist at all. You really got to get focused. So the job actually got harder with consolidation because you got to know when to go there and when not to go there.
I think in both, I won't speak completely for Russell, but I know him well enough for all these years. I think we both went to law school because it seemed like the best thing to do at the time. In my case, I wasn't particularly interested in getting into music. I thought I was getting into legal services or civil rights or social justice kind of thing. That's what I was focused on as I went to law school. While I was in law school, the way things worked out politically in terms of the national situation, I graduated in 1981. And just that path kind of closed, but starting to start seeing myself in music and eventually becoming a manager, I don't think it hurt to have a law degree. I think certainly the skills you learn in law school, negotiation, arguing, discussing, writing. The other thing I would say, just for the sake of the room, you referred to Don Passman, who is a fine, if you ever had to say like top 5 entertainment lawyers in the country, he's up there. And he has a book that was very helpfully written in the early 90s. And I think it's in its 11th edition now. It's called it's a great title, All You Need to Know About the Music Business. So anybody who's interested in the music business, it's not meant to necessarily be read from cover to cover. It can be read chapter by chapter if you're interested in what does an agent do? What's merchandising? How does the ticketing system work? What about AI and music? It's just a smart guy, and he writes for other lawyers or smart clients. And finally, he updates it every 3 years because he started realizing pretty early on. He wrote the book the first time in like 91 or 92. By 94, it was outdated. By 97, Napster was getting cranked up. So he updates it religiously every 3 years. And so it's on either the 11th or 12th edition, but I commend it to everybody who's interested in this line of work someday.
We're the largest sports agency in the world too. And to be a sports agent, you either have to have an MBA or a law degree. It doesn't apply to music. And so to me, it's about following your passion. If you really care about something, I always say 90% of the world's either lazy or stupid. If you have halfway decent, most people that graduate from Davidson got brains. They're pretty smart guys. But if you're bound and determined to succeed, you will, so.
Thank you.
I got one thing to say about Davidson. I encourage, and I know we've got a freshman here that I'm really excited about who likes music. Colleges, I think, miss the boat. They could be so much more fertile ground for breaking new talent, and you build relationships. There's no reason why you couldn't have once a month comedy night here. And if the comedy agents know it's once a month, they know it is, they've got it footnoted, and they're going to say, hey, we can go to Davidson, we can hide away, we can do some shows. Same with musicians. Like I said, I offered Zach Brown here. They said, students don't like country music. I said, well, it doesn't matter. He's one of the biggest acts in the world now. So I just think if you have somebody you trust, you like it, encourage it, take some chances, have some regular programming. And then once the student body knows that, hey, first Thursdays, there's comedy, that's second Tuesdays, whatever it is, try to build a flow going, and you'll have more pictures on the wall like you do over there. There's plenty of talent out there. They come from the bottom up.
I love that you have the tennis courts thing going. That sounds like a great venue.
Another thing, I love parents, but I love it when I get an email from a kid looking for a job and say, oh, my dad, but I'm hearing from the kid, not from the parent. So I encourage, I know how much you love your kid. I get the kid to.
Show that guy I know nothing about this, and I don't.
Yeah, but you're here. That's exciting that you're here doing that.
I'm graduating like 3 weeks. And like band management is just like I can't really imagine doing anything else right now. But I'm having a very hard time of like looking at management, like conglomerates, and like a lot of them are wanting experience for like 2 years managing a band, and like I just don't have that. And I guess like having a lot of trouble knowing like exactly where I should be looking. Do I have a plan to go to Nashville and just like immerse myself, and if I find someone I like, then be like,
Yes.
hey. Oh, okay. Well, I should just go
Jump
do
in.
that.
The employment side is very similar to the artist side. And I'm really big in mental health as well. And I think everybody needs therapy. I think every artist needs it tenfold, because you start off your career, you don't have 2 pots to piss in, no one cares who you are. Then all of a sudden you have a hit record, and overnight you're a multimillionaire, and everybody wants a piece of you. That's enough to screw up anybody's brain. But from the employment side, it's the same way. If you just got to get your foot in the door and then win and be determined. There was a guy I hired, goes back a decade, but he graduated from Vanderbilt, was really smart. The first year he's out on shows, he had opinions and everything. And then he was there second year, he just kind of dwindled off. And then he retired and went into real estate. And I saw him, I said, man, I had high hopes for you. I said, you were so enthusiastic. And the first year, and then you kind of dwindled off. He said, well, I did all that the first year. I saw it didn't get me anywhere. I went, you made a good decision to quit. because I was like 30 I was still in awe that I got into places for free. I don't have to pay to go see shows. You guys do. You know, I'm 68. I love to go into shows. I love doing what I do. So if you don't have a passion for it, if you're an artist, you'll stay the course until something happens, you know. Same with the business side. Play the game. Yeah, play the game. Get in and do whatever you can. And don't mind picking up dirty ditches or answering the phones or ordering coffee or whatever. Just do what it takes and you'll learn your way.
Thanks. I'll tell my mom that you said that and that she should support me.
Yeah, so I'm kind of in the same boat as Callie, and I've been trying to apply for jobs in the industry. I'm not sure what I want to do yet, but I've narrowed down to record label or, working under agencies. So I kind of want to know like what tipped the scale for you to be a music agent?
Well, it tipped because in high school, I booked all the prom dances. I was a concert chairman here for 2 years. So I'm calling all the agents to find out what talent they have to bring to school. So I'm building relationships. So I know each person at each different agency. So I said, hey, when I get out, I'm going to jump on their side of the fence, and and I went to Paragon and gave him a proposal to start a college department. And I walked in the first day of work. He goes, there's your desk. You get to split an assistant with this club agent. I went, great. And I sat down. I went, now what do I do? So I got up, I went to the bookstore, bought a Barron's College Guide and just started down A's all the way to Wyoming and just started naming who's the concert chairman, who's the director of student activities. I just started building a business, calling up and introducing myself and trying to sell talent. So you figure out a way. So never was a choice for me. I knew what I wanted to do.
Thank you.
And I would say a couple of things. You said you're not sure. This is the forum. Being at school is the place to try to figure that out. But whenever you start, that's the only thing you want to do is to be an agent or be your manager, whatever that job is, fake it till you make it. Get in there and act like it. And then when you think there's a different path you want to turn, but I tell everybody, we've got probably 50 people out in other industries that started at CAA. Looks really good on your resume. If you have those initials next to your name and you have a letter of reference, that's positive. So just get in and just buckle down.
Hey, thanks so much for your time and being here. I was wondering, when thinking about like the music industry, especially from a legal standpoint, what your all opinions are for creativity and originality, especially when thinking about all of the court cases on intellectual property and creative property, especially regarding some of the Marvin Gaye and Ed Sheeran court cases. I was wondering your opinions on being original and trying to take inspiration from the past, but also navigating through legal issues.
I mean, you can make the argument that no pop music is original. Like, how many chords are there? How many strings on a guitar? How many variations are there? Are there any that haven't been, created and performed? I managed a band called Fastball, and they had a big hit called The Way. It was the #1 hit, and they got sued for infringement by the writer of some ballad from the 60s. And I pulled it up and listened to it, and there were some similarities. I mean, I didn't think enough for somebody to make a claim, but somebody was trying to make money off a claim. So we hired a musicologist who proved that the sequence of chords that they were claiming was an infringement had been in songs, since the 17th century. It just historically, that's how, prior art, that's how we got the thing thrown out. And, Fastball certainly knew nothing about any of this music in the past. They just wrote a rock song. There are some cases, the George Harrison case. I mean, that, My Sweet Lord and He's So Fine, those are so similar that yeah, he lost that case for a reason. And that's not to say he copied the song. Uh, the arrangements and the production were radically different, but the core melody and chord sequence was almost identical. So, sometimes it's a legitimate claim, but I think a lot of times it's somebody thinking they can get into court and get a settlement. and
Or
make
not get
money.
into court and just get a settlement.
Yeah.
Shake the tree a little bit, especially who was the guy Marvin Gaye's estate sued? It was a huge producer and it was a big selling record. Oh. Pharrell, yeah. I guess there were two. So
Yeah.
those are huge defendants and huge judgment worthy, And the other thing, just as a practical matter, when you represent talent, especially talent that has, decent number of plays and sales and, would be a target if anybody ever wanted to say, hey, that song sounds a lot like our song. You would have heard it, or we sent a demo tape 7 years ago. Here's the receipt, that kind of stuff. Luckily, that didn't happen to us that much, but we did have something called errors and omissions insurance, E&O. And E&O policies are basically copyright insurance. And the reason you buy it is for defense coverage. You buy it, yes, it'll cover the claim if anybody's ever successful in saying you stole my song and they then prove it. You're at least going to get up to the limit of the policy, you're going to get that covered. But as or more importantly, it hires the lawyers, because even fending these guys off costs money. You hire good litigators to defend your claim. And we didn't do that. We hired them, and we hire a musicologist. That's not free, to go find the prior art and say, even if these two things, what was it? Stairway to Heaven recently was a big case over that one. The guitar sequence at the beginning, which again goes back to the medieval times. So it's, on all these things, they're case by case. Depends on the circuit you're in, the jury. Some seem worse, more egregious than others. It's hard to give an answer that covers all the situations.
Just a quick question. So for any of you, is there an artist that was kind of the one that got away from you? Either they picked someone else or you didn't have the capacity to take them into your portfolio. I'm curious for any of you if there's someone that you're like, oh, I really wanted them.
I told Duran they were crazy to take out production. So we booked all these punk bands that just walked in a bar, plug and play, travel in a van. They came in, wanted to bring trucks and buses and all that. Nah, that's not punk. You gotta get in the van the first time around. They didn't hear it like that, so lost that one.
I think that happens all the time, actually. When I started managing Indigo Girls and Matthew, and then I took on Sean Mullins and he had a #1 hit. Sheryl Crow was coming along and I had somebody in my office he worked in LA, and his wife was the product manager for Sheryl when she was developing her record. And she was begging me to manage her, and I said, nah, I can't do it. And yeah, she would have been a decent client. But honestly, I didn't have time. And I made a decision as a manager that I didn't want to take on more clients than I could manage personally. And, which was kind of against the thread, because management companies were consolidating and building big companies with lieutenants, essentially, a corporate structure and lots of managers, and they were assigned to different clients. I didn't want to run a company. I wanted to manage musicians. So, I turned down a lot of acts through the years, that even ones that I thought could be successful, just because I didn't think I could do it all. And also, I came very close to managing Brandi Carlile. Had I done that, there would have been some kind of hell between Indigo Girls and Brandi. There wasn't room in my world to manage both of those artists at the same time. So
I never wanted to manage anybody except REM. I figured I was 1 for 1. And if I managed 10 other bands, I'd be 1 for 11. And I would have been way busier. And I was really never all that ambitious. And when the band broke up, a couple of people approached me, assuming that, hey, I was at that point, younger than I am now. It was 13 years ago. that I might want to keep on going with a couple of very respectable acts that, you know, wondered if I was interested. And I thought about it. My kids were in ninth grade and third grade. I am very involved in education, both at the local level and, you know, our own schools in Athens and a couple of boards and one. And like I say, I'm not that ambitious. I'd kind of grown up with REM. There was still going to be some ongoing work with REM. I had no idea that with streaming, it's going to be as busy as it is. I'm as busy as I want to be, and, you know, work-life balance and all that kind of stuff. So I just chose not to. So I didn't have anybody that got away because I just didn't ever really feel the need to do that. I was as busy as I wanted to be with our guys, with the guys at home.
When he did the deal to go to Warner Brothers Records,
Yeah.
Bert knew he'd never had to work again. a
That's
day in
not
his
true.
life.
It was a good deal, but no, that's a little much of an exaggeration, but we don't talk about that.
Hi, I'm actually the treasurer of the radio station now called Walt, and we've started a fund to like fund artists some more, and we have a lot more going on campus, opportunities for bands and artists to perform live. What would your recommendation, you know, we have a good solid base here, but what would your recommendation to like start getting bands and artists more out there beyond Davidson?
You need an agent.
Yeah. Rephrase your question. I didn't understand the question.
My question was like, we have a great place for people to perform in front of students and, you know, for student bands to get out there among the student body, but how can we really take the next step of like expanding beyond just Davidson?
Well, as I said, there was a full page ad. My younger brother, who's 7 years younger than me, he was concert chairman when I was an agent, and I sold him the REM, sold him. And there was an article in the Charlotte Observer, says how are all these cool acts showing up at Davidson? It would talked about my brother, talked about me. So I just think you got to find people you trust, find some gut, and if you put the hours into the union and doing that stuff, you deserve the right to have your opinions heard. And you know, everybody knows what's going on in the underground. Be ahead of the curve. As I said, start a comedy series. It's a perfect room for comedy. Start new artist, singer, songwriter. You know, good Lord, you could have somebody here every week if you wanted it. But it needs to be organized and not time waste, and run it like a business. You got to learn. We'll help you, but run it like a business. Know your budgets, know what you can spend, and then keep the flow. And everybody's, oh yeah, Davidson does Tuesdays on first Tuesdays for comedy. Listen to somebody there.
We actually just started doing first Fridays of the month for fundraising for student artists and for student artists to perform with open mic. So
Okay.
Thinking about your question, not so much as like a collective of a bunch of bands, but an individual band or the collective, you're thinking about kind of the bigger picture. Just from our experience, as the guys were getting going, they wanted to play. You can't play Athens every weekend, so they started playing Atlanta. You've got Charlotte. I think that's Rick, right? Rick, there are people in Charlotte who are very interested in Davidson particularly, and it's 20 miles away. There's Chapel Hill, and there's a lot of affinity between, I mean, expanding your footprint isn't that hard, even going to college, if it's weekends. And then it gets a little harder in our guy's case. It got a lot harder within a year and a half or 2 years. So someday they'll probably get honorary degrees. But meanwhile, they got to be REM, and that worked out well for them. You know, it's not.
Did I
the same.
misunderstand your question? Did he answer what you're talking about?
He's talking about growing on the side of
Student,
Davidson.
student artist.
Yeah.
Let me tell
Yeah,
you
student
something.
artist.
Back to what I said about REM playing in Atlanta. First time they supported a band, next time you decide, your students decide. If you say you had a group here that played every Tuesday night and you couldn't get in the joint, if you can't do it locally, you're going to be really hard knocks trying to get it. Start here. The word of mouth should take you way down the line. And if it doesn't, slow walk it.
With that, I wish we could sit here and talk to these three for the rest of the afternoon, but there's a tea time, I hear. So before we go, I'd like to ask us to thank our guests one more time for their commitment to Davidson